Hello everyone, John here, All Miniatures Great and Small, and today we're going to do our very first Team Yankee unit overview. This time we're going to start with one of my favorites, the M3 Bradley infantry fighting vehicle for the Americans in the new American Team Yankee sourcebook. So Team Yankee's been out now for, has it been 4 years, 5 years? It's been out for a while, it doesn't seem that long. And one of the few things that when it first came out that people asked was, where are the Bradleys? The Americans started out with the M113 APC, the Armored Personnel Carrier, which is used lots of different ways and still has a place in lists. But the new book brought some new, kind of advanced the Team Yankee timeline along and brought some cool new iconic Cold War vehicles, the Bradley being one of them. So the Bradley is really a great multi-purpose vehicle. It's interesting in how it was designed and its function in the Army. There are basically two different versions, and each version has two upgrades, or one upgrade. So 4 types of tanks overall when we're talking about the Bradley. First off, these are built as the A2 variant, the more advanced, better armored variant, but we're going to be talking about both variants. So we have an M2 and an M3 Bradley. They're both Bradleys, they both look the same, but the M2 Bradley is designed as a transport, and we'll talk about that unit in a moment. The M3 Bradley is designed more as a scout unit. It typically doesn't have infantry assigned to it. So you have kind of a difference in roles. So you have the M2 and the M3. Then both of those can be upgraded to the A2 model. So the M2A2 and the M3A2. Basically what that does is it increases the armor and gives you the option for, I think, the upgraded tow. I can't remember if both versions can take it or not, but let's start with what we're seeing here. So this would be basically a scout section, a unit of 2 vehicles. So what does the Bradley bring to the table? Well, here's the card. The M3 Bradley has a lot of special rules. It's a tank unit, amphibious, has applique armor, scout, spearhead, thermal imaging. Its skill is 4, courage is 4, morale, remount, assault 4, counterattacks 5, but everything else is 4, which is very typical for the Americans in Team Yankee. They're kind of the middle ground. It's hit on a 4, so they're basically treated as veteran if you're going by old Flames of War terminology. And then here we see the stats for the M3, front armor 3, side armor 2, top armor 1, and the M3A2, which gives us that improved armor 5, 4, and 1. Speed-wise, tactical of 10, nothing new there. Terrain dash 16, cross-country dash of 28, road dash 32, and a cross rating of 2+. This thing can really haul. A lot of things in Team Yankee can move very fast. Team Yankee is in a lot of ways a more fluid game than than Flames of War, in that the units are just more maneuverable. Alright, weapons. You got the M242 25mm Bushmaster gun. Range of 24 inches. This guy has a rate of fire 3 halted, moving 2, anti-tank 8, and a 5+ firepower. It also has anti-helicopter and stabilizer. Then you've got the TOW 2 missile. So I guess that applies to both variants, which is minimum range 8, maximum range 48 inches. Which, keep in mind, that outranges most main battle tanks' main guns, which typically cap out at 40. It's rate of fire 1, but only halted. It can't fire the TOW missile while moving. Anti-tank 23, 3+ firepower, guided, and heat. Then it also has a 7.62mm machine gun, with which gets you 1 shot. And typical stats on that. Just 16 inches, anti-tank 2, firepower 6. Alright, so on the back here we see the cost. 2 standard M3s cost 5 points, 2 of the M3A2s cost 6 points. So for 1 point, you can upgrade both tanks to the improved armor version, basically. Then here we have the special rules definitions. Amphibious is pretty self-explanatory. Anti-helicopter is. Applique armor. The M3A2 Bradley front and side armor is 13 against heat weapons. So that's pretty nice. And then guided, of course, for the missile. No 2-hit penalty for ranges over 16 inches. Then you've got special rules. We've got heat. Target armor is not increased for range over 16. It is affected by applique, bazooka skirts, BDD, Chabum, and ERA. It's got scout, can remain gone to ground while moving. Spearhead, stabilizer, it can move 14 inches while gaining a +1 to hit penalty. Machine guns can't shoot. So stabilizer is a little bit different than in Flames of War. Basically, if you move 10 inches, you can shoot your main gun at its moving rate of fire. If you move up to 14 inches, so 10 to 14 inches, you can still fire, but it's +1 to hit, and machine guns can't fire. And thermal imaging just helps you at night. So there you go. Sorry, that's kind of a long-winded description, but there's a lot of cool things going on with the tank. So the M2 has the same exact stats as the M3 that we talked about, so we're not going to pull that card out. And look at all that that same thing. Although there is one difference here. Sorry, I will bring this out. The difference of the M2 Bradley is it has Passenger 2 special rule instead of Spearhead, and it has the Assault 5+ instead of Assault 4+ for the M3. So there are some there are some differences. The M2 is typically just a transport section for a unit of infantry. Alright, so now I've talked a little bit about the unit. There are other nations have something similar. The British have the Warrior with Milan launcher. The Soviets have the BMP-3, which is kind of their latest armored personnel carrier. So there's a lot of cool tanks that are like this, but the Bradley is a nice all-around tank because it's got a little bit of everything except armor. It really doesn't have armor. But the you've got gun, a 25mm gun, which is great against enemy BMPs, light-skinned vehicles. Those are great for the 25mm gun to go after. You've got a TOW-2 missile to deal with any heavy armor, and you can outrange that heavy armor. Then you've got a machine gun as well, which is just kind of extra gravy. So it's also got anti-helicopter, so if they take out your dedicated AA, you still have something that can shoot at them on your turn and deal with those pesky helicopters. So it's a pretty cool tank. So how can you field this tank in Team Yankee? There's a couple of ways to do it because we have so many versions. One is there's a dedicated company, an M3 Bradley armored cavalry troop, which is pretty interesting, and basically it lets you take lots of sections of 2 in your list. And it's a great way to do it because that's the M3, so you're going to have Spearhead, you're going to have Scout, you're going to have all that good stuff. The other way to do it is, or another company that can include it, would be the M2 Bradley mech like company. So basically it's like an infantry company with with M2s as their transport options, which is very, very attractive. Before that, they were coming in, if they're U.S. Army, the infantry was riding in M113s, or the Marines would be riding in, I forget what those are called, because I have to remember. But neither one of them are quite as good as the Bradley. The M113 transport didn't have a TOW missile attached to it. So it didn't have dedicated anti-tank. A unit of 4 M2 Bradleys with the TOW-2 missiles is very deadly. So that transport platoon is almost as big a threat as the infantry, and in some cases more if your opponent's T-80s or T-64s. Those Bradleys are going to be kind of scary to them. That TOW-2 missile at 23, it can actually threaten T-80s from the front, and not much can. So there is that to keep in mind. But if you have 4 Bradleys and a full infantry mech platoon, you can take a whole company. So a couple of M2 backed infantry squads. That's a pretty powerful, formation on the table. All right, you can also field these as individual platoons. So if you're running M60 company or an Abrams company or what have you, you can attach a platoon as a support platoon to your formation. So the scouts are a great unit because they give you spearhead. They let your army move a little bit forward, and again, it just brings more TOW-2 missiles to your list, which is very helpful. You can also attach an infantry company, an infantry platoon, which one infantry platoon I think is a great attachment to almost any force. So that it's kind of a quick look at the Bradley infantry fighting vehicle, the M2 and M3 variants. They're very cool. I think they have a place in almost any American list, unless you're going like a dedicated Marine list. Then you're not going to see Bradleys in the Marines in this time frame. So there you go, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Have you guys used Bradleys? What do you think of them? How do you think they compare to the M113? I personally really like them. I think, one, they're a really cool model, and 2, I think they have great stats on the tabletop, which is what we're looking for. So there you go, guys. Please do, again, leave us comments down in the video, below the video description. You can also check us out on Facebook at All Miniatures Great and Small. Please click that bell to receive notification when we publish new content. As always, thanks for watching, and keep on wargaming.